Welcome to Living Chassidus. Together, let's live the Chassidus we learn.
Hi everybody, I'm Aryeh Gurewitz. First of all, I want to say thank you so much to Living Chassidus for Men's Living Chassidus, for inviting me to speak. The topic tonight is going to be our emotional relationship with Hashem, having a real, strong, tangible, emotional relationship with Hashem, both in general and as that applies to Elul and Tishrei. So I want to start with sharing with you a little bit of my personal story around this topic. It's actually a topic that's very close to my heart that I've been thinking about, speaking about for a long time. And my story with it goes like this. So when I was a kid, I was in Reform Hebrew school. And for whatever reason in my Reform Hebrew school, we got little sparks of Chassidus that we were exposed to. So if you know the song, Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly everywhere, we sang that in my Reform Hebrew school. We actually said, God is here, God is there, God is truly everywhere. There was another song that we sang that I don't know where the song comes from, but it was like, all around us is Shekhinah. It was like with hand motions, like all around us is Shekhinah. And so we had that. And I also remember hearing a word, which I believe is a Kutzker word, if I'm not mistaken, that the Kutzker Rebbe was asked, where is Hashem? And he answered, wherever you let him in. So I hope I said it right, but that's the way I remember hearing it. So as a kid, I guess even as a kid, I had a little bit of a spiritual side to me. And it really bothered me, like, Hashem is everywhere. He's here, there, everywhere. I don't really see him. I don't really feel him. Sounds like it makes sense that he should be everywhere. I mean, if he's not everywhere, where else would he be? But I don't really get what that means, and it really bothered me. And then wherever you let him in, that like bothered me even more. Like, I thought he's everywhere. So what are you telling me is wherever I let him in? What does it even mean to let him in? So this is something that bothered me even when I was a kid. And when I became frum, it's interesting, like, even though, obviously you become frum, so that obviously has something to do with Hashem and God and everything, but it was almost like there was like becoming frum because the Torah is true, and you almost like, you don't really need necessarily this like tangible relationship with Hashem for that. It's like, okay, there's Hashem gave the Torah is true, so you want to follow it. It teaches us to live a good life. There's a lot of wisdom in it. We want to learn it, we want to follow it, but it doesn't mean that you actually like feel like Hashem is there, right? And at a certain point, all of this bothered me enough that I started to consciously work on it. In fact, one of the things that happened when I was in yeshiva that pushed me to realize this is something I really wanted to work on is there was someone, like a family friend, if I remember correctly, that was having some kind of a health problem, and so my family asked me to mention their name, but they gave me the name, but it's say by Misha Beirach, and it's a daven for them, and it was like a funny concept for me, like they're asking me to pray for someone specific, like I don't really do that, but then again, it totally makes sense for them to ask me to do that. Like after all, I'm like becoming religious and everything, so it really makes sense that someone should be able to ask me to pray for them. So that like kind of shook me up and made me realize, like, this whole thing doesn't really make a whole lot of sense if I'm following the religion, but God does not feel real. There's something off about that for me. And that led me to start really thinking more deeply about this topic and searching a little bit for like not only Yiddishkeit, but like that emotional relationship with Hashem. Fast forward to today. So a few months ago, I remember I was at a Farbrengen, I think it was on Yitzis Kislev, and at the Farbrengen, it was a nice discussion kind of Farbrengen. Everybody was sharing their thoughts on different things, and so everybody was sharing their thoughts on different things at this Yitzis Kislev Farbrengen, and I was I said whatever I was saying about Hashem and so on, and I got a comment. This is the Breslov Sheba Lubavitch, and I was like, oh, I didn't know that Breslov, like, they took ownership of they have copyright on having an emotional relationship with Hashem. I didn't realize, but it was just so funny for me that, like, coming from where I was coming from in, like, struggling with this topic of having an emotional relationship with Hashem and Hashem feeling real and whatever, that, like, I became the guy who's Breslov Sheva Lubavitch at that particular Farbrengen. Not in a bad way. I'm just saying, like, the fact that was like a significant shift that occurred for me. That, like, I went from being a kid wondering, like, what does this mean? Hashem is everywhere and Hashem is wherever you let him in, and all the stories that I just shared a few minutes ago, to, like, I'm the guy who's, like, pumping the idea of, like, the emotional relationship with Hashem. So what I want to do is I want to share with you a few ideas that I think could really help everyone develop their emotional relationship with Hashem. Because I basically went on a conscious journey. Like I said, after that story in yeshiva, I consciously worked on this really for a few years, and I came to feel that it is, first of all, it's not something for, like, earlier generations when they had higher neshamas or something like that. It's really something for all of us. And I came to feel that the main challenge of it is that we don't know how to do it. So, like, we're not necessarily taught exactly what we should think about, or exactly how do we go from a state of consciousness of not recognizing to Hashem to a state of consciousness of recognizing Hashem. Like, what are we supposed to do exactly? So it's much less a problem with, like, oh, we're a low generation, we're the end of Golos, we're the Iktus of the Mashiach, so we're not shy at all these things. Our job is to just do. I think that it's very possible for us to have a relationship with Hashem if we know what we're supposed to be doing. And so that was, something that I became convinced of as well, is that, it's not just for individual, like Yechidei Segula, or, like, certain spiritual people. I think it's something that can really be studied and learned and taught and replicated and built for every person. I have not yet actually tried that en masse. So if anyone wants to, like, create some kind of program or something where we'll all create a structured, course and try to build a relationship with Hashem, that would be a cool thing to do. But for now, I'll share just 2 points. Maybe we'll go into more afterwards, but there's 2 main ones on my mind that I think are, like, really, really essential for setting up that real relationship with Hashem on a day-to-day basis. And it doesn't really make that much sense to go into Elul and Tishrei and the King in the Field and Binyan HaMalchus and those kind of things until we have that in place. At least that's the way that I see it. The idea of the King in the Field. So, like, the King in the Field is special if the rest of the year you have a relationship with the King where he's not in the field. So it's not like an Elul. It's not like we go from, like, not having a relationship with Hashem to having a relationship with Hashem. It's that we always have a relationship with Hashem, and depending on the time of year, so the relationship with Hashem takes on a different flavor, a different style, different emotions that get involved at different times of the year. So let's focus first on the baseline. I don't want to say regular day, but the everyday. These are things that apply every day, whether it's the holiest day of the year or the most regular day of the year. Let's focus on those concepts first. By the way, if anyone has any questions, feel free to jump in. So going back to the question of the song, right? I really want to get more of the background of the song of Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly everywhere. Like, what did the Rabbi say when the Rabbi came out with the song? Does anybody know? Is there, like, a certain sikha or something? I would love to find out. If anyone listening to this knows, let me know. So Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly everywhere. It seems to me that the idea that Hashem is everywhere has to do with the Alter Rebbe's mimer in Parshas Vayera, Torah or Parshas Vayera, Pasach Eliyahu, where the Alter Rebbe explains his shitta in the Machlekes of Tzimtzum Rishon. You might be familiar with the Rabbi's letter about four possible ways of understanding the Tzimtzum Rishon. One is the Gra, one is the Nefesh HaChaim, one is a third one that the Rebbe puts out that no one seems to actually hold up, but the Rebbe just puts out the concept. And then the other one is the Alter Rebbe. We're not going to go into a full explanation of all the Kabbalistic details and stuff now because we want to focus on the relationship. But the point is that, very briefly, the Alter Rebbe's understanding of the Tzimtzum, of the process of Hashem hiding himself in order to create the world, that's really an oversimplification of what Tzimtzum even means, but again, we're not going there right now, maybe another time. So the Alter Rebbe writes that Hashem made a Tzimtzum on the Or Ein Sof, but not on Atzmos U'Mahus, right? And on Atzmos U'Mahus, it's not possible, it's not shaykh, the Rebbe says, for there to be Tzimtzum, and it's not shaykh for there to be Helen. So it's not even appropriate to say that Atzmos is concealed by the Tzimtzum Rishon. It's only the Or that existed, before the Tzimtzum, before any of the worlds. That Or was affected by the Tzimtzum, but Atzmos was not affected by the Tzimtzum. So what does that mean practically? It means that, in the Alter Rebbe's words, Adarabba Hamar Hu B'His Galus. The Mar, the Etzem, the essence of Hashem, which is not the light, right? What's the difference between the essence of Hashem and the light of Hashem? Think of like the sun, right? This is what Alter Rebbe says. So think of the sun. So you have the ball of the sun, and then the light is something that's emitted by the sun, right? So the etzem of Hashem is Hashem. It's not something emitted by Hashem, so to speak. The or is already something that he creates, but we shouldn't use the word creates because it's not a nivra, right? A nivra means there's a feeling of separateness from Hashem. So, but the or is something that's like coming out of Hashem kiviyachol, right? So the Alter Rebbe says that the Tzimtzum does not affect the Mar, and Adrabah Hamar Hu B'His Galus, which means the etzem of Hashem is right here, revealed, here, there, and everywhere. So why don't you feel it? So the reason why you don't feel it is because, well, first of all, you actually do feel it, but we'll get to that in a second. The reason you don't feel what you think you should feel is because what you think you should feel is like, if the essence of Hashem is here, then like I should feel this overwhelming sense that He is all that exists and stuff like that, right? Or something along those lines, or that He's creating us every moment, or something. There's something powerful, some kind of powerful experience that I should feel if Hashem's essence is right here, right? So the Rebbe Rashab on the Hagois, the Rebbe Rashab has it's called the Hagois, the Pasach Eliyahu Tafresh Nun Ches, where he writes a lot of biurim on the Alter Rebbe's Maimer that I'm talking about, and he explains the idea of Hiskalus of the Mar. Sorry, we're getting into a lot of terms here. We're going to come back down in a minute. So the Hiskalus of the Mar is not like the Hiskalus of the Or. The revelation of Or, the revelation of Or causes that kind of powerful experience. It causes that, like Malachim are constantly, their whole existence is just singing to Hashem and love of Him and fear of Him and feeling how they're being created by Him at every moment. So Or creates that kind of like powerful spiritual experience, or Eloki, right? I compare it often to, if I look at the floor right now, I know that the light bulb is on. So how do I know that the light bulb is on if I'm looking at the floor? Because the nature of light is that it causes you to have an experience of the source of the light, right? If I look out the window during the daytime, even if I don't see the sun in the sky, I see that the sun is shining because that's what light does. Light makes you aware of the source of the light. But the light bulb does not make you aware of the light bulb, right? If the light bulb is off, then you actually don't see the light bulb. So it's kind of funny because you would think that the essence must be even more powerful than the light that it's projecting. That's what you would think. But it actually doesn't work that way. The light actually creates a powerful experience. And if the light is not there, then the light bulb, so to speak, it sits there quietly, almost invisibly. But then Alter Rebbe says something very interesting. he says that Hamarhu b'eskalus v'lachin afilu tinoikes yadu sheyesh sham elokam matzui aval enam yedim echuma. So therefore, even children know, because the Marhu v'eskalus, because the Etzem of Hashem is not concealed by the Tzimtzum. So therefore, what? He doesn't say therefore we're all having this powerful experience of Hashem's presence, right? Like I just said, that wouldn't flow. He says, therefore, even children know that there's a God in existence. They know that there's like a higher power. They know that there's like something there, but they don't know how or what, because they don't have the hiskalus of the or. So in other words, what the Alter Rebbe is saying is the way that the experience of Hashem works is that the or Eloki creates a powerful, intense, emotional, causing you to lose your existence type of experience of Hashem. But Hashem himself, the essence of Hashem, actually does not cause you to experience that. It's a very subtle experience of just knowing that there's God and I don't know anything else. Just there's something. In other places, I don't, if I'm remembering correctly, it doesn't bring this in Alter Rebbe's mind, but in other places when this idea is brought, it says, therefore, Shem Shemaim Shagar B'fi Kol. Everybody talks about God. You know, everybody knows this thing called God. You talk to anybody on the street, say God, or whatever the word they use for it in their language, and everybody knows what you're talking about. It's like, how do they know what we're talking about? What? Yeah, but not like in a way of like very clear understanding, but in the sense of like, there's something, you know, God, you know, the higher power. Yeah, it makes sense. We can have a conversation about that. You know, might not agree on the details or the echuma, right, the how or what he wants from us, or, you know, all that, but the idea that there's something, everyone sort of knows. Everyone sort of feels it. I didn't do, I don't have any official statistics on this, but people say that even people who are like hardcore atheists, you know, a lot of them will be like, no, there could be something, it's just not God, you know, but what?
In the foxhole, there are no atheists.
What does that mean?
When the bomb is dropping.
Right.
There's no atheists.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, that's another thing, that when the ego is broken, then you know, we don't have such an insistence about that. But also, even intellectually, like I think a lot of people who say that they don't believe in God, they'll feel that there's something, there's universe, there's spirit, there's whatever, you know, there's some kind of thing which is not us, which is there. And that's really what Alter Rebbe is describing, of just that simple knowing that there's something there, not really knowing what, not really have any more sophistication than just that, but just knowing that there's something. And the Alter Rebbe says that even children know it, and there's certain sikhs where the Rebbe emphasizes like specifically children know it, like children feel it like the most, you know, because their mind is not developed and they don't have all these other ideas in their head. So you say to Hashem, and it, like, you know, it makes sense to them. They experience it. Curious, show of hands, how many people remember that simple sense of Hashem or God or whatever word you used when you were a kid? What word did you use for Hashem when you were a kid? God, right? What about you?
Yeah. I had a funny story when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I was doing something wrong in Shabbos, I don't know what. Started cursing me out, and it's like, I didn't understand that. I walked up and said, what's the Hebrew Shalom? Why?
I know, it's like challenging for me that we're not supposed to say God. It's like, you know, I know I just said it a bunch of times on this video. Hopefully it's okay because I'm teaching Torah. What about you? Also, probably.
Whoever is controlling the Cubs winning.
No, but I'm saying, what word did you use? Also the word God, right? So when you think of the word God, happens to be in this particular audience that we have here. So when you think of the word God, you kind of like feel something, right? Like, yeah, maybe. What? Right. What about when you say the word Hashem?
Now?
Yeah.
Now I'm not a kid anymore.
Do you feel like there's something like there? I'm saying, for me, when I say the word Hashem, it's almost like a concept, and a lot of times in my mind when I say the word Hashem, I'm connecting it back to the word God, because God for me captures that feeling that I had as a kid, of like there being this being here. My wife, who grew up in Crown Heights, says the opposite. For her, the word God sounds like this concept, and Hashem is like Hashem. So I think that the word, this is just a theory that I spoke to a friend about this, a friend that learns a lot of Chassidus, and he also had the same theory that the word that we use for Hashem when we're a kid, like captures that awareness of Hashem that we had when we were a kid, which is this awareness of Amar Hu B'Skalos. So it'd be an interesting activity for homework to try to like dig back into your memory and try to.
I don't think the word was mentioned at all.
Where'd you go to Hebrew school?
Not part of my life. I grew up in Crown Heights.
So what am I saying? So this idea of Hamar Hu V'Skalos, and that is really the explanation of the song, right? Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly everywhere, because he didn't hide himself, he didn't contract himself, he only hid and contracted his light. And that took away the powerful experience of experiencing him, but the quiet experience of just knowing that there's something, which is all there really is to know about Atzmos U'Mos, that there is nothing really to know. He just is. He's built in Mitzias Nimtza. He's something that exists, but there's no description of him. So that simple knowing of the child is actually the true knowledge of Atzmos, and that's the idea of Hashem being here and there and truly everywhere. Yeah, but I think that so it's true that naturally it dissipates as the mind develops, but I think that part of what the Rebbe is teaching in the Sichas where the Rebbe talks about this, like one of the Hadronim and the Sicha Toldos and Beis, especially the Sicha Toldos and Beis, is that like you can actually, by becoming aware of this and getting used to thinking about it, you can actually like tap back into it. Now, the reason why I brought all this up is to focus on the emotional relationship that we're developing with Hashem, right? So one other thing I wanted to say, actually I meant to say this before, is that there's a book called The Practical Guide to Davening. It's an orange book by Av Katz. Shout out to Av Katz for the following thing that I'm about to say. Everyone should buy his book, and if the book is out of print, we should get enough people that want to buy it. That makes it worth it for him to reprint it, because it's a great book. So in his book, he wrote something that really changed my life, because it was, like I said, I went on a personal journey to work on these ideas, or not ideas, this relationship with Hashem. And a big part of what kicked me off was like something that he writes in his book, which for me was like a missing link. And that was that he writes about how the foundation of everything in terms of a relationship with Hashem and davening and all that is that you have to feel like Hashem is as real as another person. Because if you don't feel like he's real, then the whole thing doesn't start. It's like, could you love an imaginary person? Like, probably not really. I mean, I guess you could love the idea of them, maybe, but a person is a real person you have a real relationship with. You have real emotions about them, right? So with Hashem, the first thing before Ava, before Yira, before B'tachan, before Kabbalah Sale, maybe, and that we can have a debate about. But in terms of emotional relationship with Hashem, right? So you have to feel like he's real. If you don't feel like he's real, then who are you having a relationship with? How could you decide if you trust him or not, or work on trusting him, if you don't even feel like he's there?
sometimes in the Torah mystery,
the Torah mitzvahs will what?
Doing Torah mystery, come to that recognition as well.
That he's real. Sure.
You may not be able to just do it. Now,
Yeah. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't. I'm not saying that we should put off Torah and mitzvahs until we feel like Hashem is real. I'm just saying that if we're looking at the emotional component of the relationship with Hashem, so the Ava, Yira, B'tachon, Simcha, feeling Hashem's Rachamim in Chedesh Elul, feeling like we want to build Hashem's Malchus on Rosh Hashanah, all the emotions begin with Him being real, feeling real to us. It's true that Torah and mitzvahs put us in an elevated state, and part of the elevated state that Torah and mitzvahs can put us through is to take us from not feeling Hashem's realness at that moment to feeling Hashem's realness at that moment, and they can even build more than that. That's definitely true. I totally agree. But we could also work on feeling that Hashem is real even when I'm not doing a mitzvah. And actually, it's important that we do, because we're supposed to, let's say, eat lunch, not lunch specifically, but we're supposed to eat l'shem shamayim, right? So eating l'shem shamayim is the purpose of my eating should not be for my pleasure, but it should be to serve Hashem. Hard to do that if you don't feel like Hashem is real. For me, I should say nothing I'm saying is like emes la'amitoi, except the Mahamarhu V'Skala stuff. Meaning, Ein Deus Em Shavis, right? So the author ever writes in the beginning of Tanya about how different neshamas are different shayrish of the neshama, right? And Anastaris Hashem Elokeinu, that these are very subtle things and they're different for every person, and Hashem made it that way. And we say a bracha chacham marazin if there's someone who can actually like meet every Jew at their level, right? So everyone has their own experience. So all the emotional stuff, I'm speaking from my own experience, and it doesn't mean that no one can have a different experience. It's just that I'm hoping that others will benefit from hearing my experience of things. And of course, I'm happy for everyone to share their experience as well. But yeah, that's a good disclaimer to put out when we're talking about these things. So you want it to be Amos Lamita, you're saying? So, okay, so for me, I just felt like once I had that awareness, like, oh, he has to feel real before I'm gonna feel anything else, any other powerful, sustained emotions over time that I'm gonna feel about him. They're not gonna last, and they're not gonna be consistent if I can't maintain a simple consciousness of him being real, right?
Real, as if you were another person.
Yeah, as feeling as real to me as another person. So like I'm right. I came here before, and it was just me and Sharon in the room. No, it wasn't just me and Sharon in the room. It was me, Sharon, and Hashem.
you weren't blown away.
Nope. Because we want that to be normal. Everywhere you go, Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly everywhere. You're alone in your house talking to your wife? No, you're not alone in your house talking to your wife. It's you, your wife, and Hashem. Third partner in the marriage. It adds a lot of meaning to that statement. There's places where the Rebbe talks letters of Shalom Bayis that I saw where the Rebbe says like, takes like Perek Memal Tanya, like Hashem is like Hashem is watching you when what you say to your wife. You're talking to your wife, Hashem's standing right there watching what you're going to say. So you better watch what you say. He cares. He cares that you should speak to your wife appropriately. Bas Melech. So
That's interesting because, like you were saying, that if you really truly believe, you feel Hashem is there, I'm not sure if the Rebbe was in the room, what you would be the very helpful experience. You're sort of saying that David's there, but you're still the same person. Shouldn't it affect you?
No, of course. Well, I'm saying that we should. No, of course it affects us. It brings us to a more elevated consciousness. Yeah. But the reason why I said no is because for me, I work on feeling this more and more of the time, like feeling it more regularly and trying, and whenever I'm feeling that, I'm living in an elevated state. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like you walk into the room and you're like, whoa, Hashem's here. Like, because Hashem was outside the room also. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean,
it's like when my boss didn't pay me, and finally I got paid. I said, "Oh, the shach funds I need right now." He goes, "The shach funds when I didn't pay you as well."
right. So it definitely puts you in an elevated state. Of course, it puts you in an elevated state. What I'm trying to say is that we should be, to a certain, as much as we can, and we really can, we can do it more and more. The more we work on it, we always want to be in that elevated state. We want to be elevated people. We want to be people that are walking around feeling an awareness of Hashem. In everything, in the mundane, in the shul, in the street. That's the foundation of Kol Masach Yiyud L'Shem Shemayim, of Kol Derechacha De'ehu, right? The Kol Derechacha De'ehu, you always know him. Yeah. So, not lost the love. Machta Eretz Yisrael. You lost the love already now. A lot of it. A good chunk of it. So, but yeah, 100%. If you're comparing, if what we're saying is that there's one state of consciousness where I'm not feeling like Hashem is real, not that I actually believe he's not real, but I'm just not feeling the reality of him like I feel the reality of another person, right? And we're comparing that to the consciousness of, yeah, I feel the reality of him like I feel the reality of another person. Then for sure, yeah, you're going to be in an elevated state. You might not be like reaching Ava Rabba and and Yira Ilah or whatever, but something, there's an awareness that he's here, right? And this is spoken about in halacha, by the way. Before anyone starts thinking that this is some kind of a very holy Kabbalistic thing, the first halachas of Kitzur Shulchan Aruch talk about Shavisi Hashem L'Negdi Samid. What is the pasuk Shavisi Hashem L'Negdi Samid? What does that literally mean? It literally means I bring Hashem into my awareness constantly. That's literally what it means. I put him before me. What do you mean I put him before me? He's there. I put him before me, meaning I bring him into my awareness. If I don't do this mitzvah, or if I just say how to do doing it when you're punished. Okay. Okay, I hear. I think when we talk about it in Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, it actually even says about getting out of bed that you should picture that the king is above you, right? So it doesn't get into the whole thing about Atmos over there, but yeah, right. But picturing him as being there, So that's why I brought up the whole idea of Hamar Hu V'Eskalos, because that for me gave me like a really clear way to feel like Hashem is real, right? And that's my first sort of objective. If I could break down, it sounds kind of funny, but if I could break down my relationship with Hashem into goals, what are my goals in my relationship with Hashem? So my very first goal is that I want to feel like he's at least as real as another person. And for me, a really helpful way to do that was to get clarity about this sugya of Hamar Hu V'Eskalos and realize like Hashem hid only his light, he didn't hide himself, and therefore he's right here because he never hid himself, so of course he's right here. And the reason why I don't experience that is, well, actually I do experience that. It's just a very subtle type of experience, not this like overwhelming type of experience like you're in an Elul or something. And once I got clarity about all that, so that really helped me call on that as like a quick sort of hispainus. In general with hispainus, when you're first learning a topic, it's new and you have to learn it and ask questions about it, and then you have to think about it slowly and whatever. But the more you review it and the more you get clarity about it, the hispainus like it picks up, and a quick reminder gets you into that space. So that's the first of the two building blocks that I see in terms of structuring a relationship with Hashem in a real way. Is first he has to be as real as another person, and like I said, I'm not going to repeat it again, the idea of Hamar Hubeskalos, that there's a Yesham Alakam Matsui, right? There's a God that exists. I don't know that much about him. I don't know necessarily anything about him, but I know that there's something there, and he's here, and he's everywhere. So then that makes him feel as real. When I think about that, that makes him feel like real to me, like another person sitting in the room. Again, like there's this group of us sitting here, and there's Hashem sitting here too. Actually, as I'm speaking about it, it's like, yeah, I do feel something. So that's number one. So let's imagine we have that in place, right? And let's imagine, you go through a whole day feeling that way. For the whole day. So it's very powerful because you're constantly feeling that you're in the presence of the King, right? Of the Creator. On the other hand, we didn't say anything about any kind of involvement of his in our life. We just said he's here. Like, it's almost like he's standing here watching. Yeah. And inside and outside and above and below. But he's like standing here watching. If all we knew about Hashem was what we just described, so it sounds like, okay, Hashem's everywhere, not doing much, but he's here. And that's pretty awesome. If that was all we knew about Hashem, not sufficient, right? So because why is it not sufficient? Because then Torah is going to tell us that we should thank him for things, and that we should ask him for things, and we should trust him to give us what we need. And how does that work? Like,
Think about it.
Right. Right. But the thing is, like, if I want to thank him for something, right? So I remember having this conversation with a group of guys when I was becoming a Baal Tshuva also. We were like all in this parsha of like trying to figure out, like, okay, we didn't know there's a Hashem, now we're learning there's a Hashem, but where is he in our life? That kind of thing. Also people ask the question, like, you want to have a relationship with Hashem, a relationship with another person, I say something to you, you say something back. With Hashem, I say something to him, he doesn't seem to say anything back. So like, it's a cute idea, relationship with Hashem, but like, it doesn't really work, So it becomes very important to be able to perceive Hashem's role in my life if I'm going to, let's say davening, which is mostly, not talking about deeper levels of davening right now, just simple Pirsha Milas davening or saying brachas. It's thanking Hashem for things that he did, asking for him to do things in the future, right? And that cycle all the time, praising and thanking are pretty similar, So, so let's take an example. This is an example the Rabbi talks about in the Sichos, Chelik Aleph, Parshas Nayach. Nayach. Malbish Harumin. Just tell a joke real quick. That when I was a kid, we also said in Reform Hebrew School, Malbish Harumin. We said it in English. We talk about Hashem clothing the naked. So when I was a kid, I was like, what naked people are we talking about that Hashem is clothing? So what does Malbish Arumin mean? Arumin means us, meaning it means us by ourselves. If Hashem wouldn't give us clothing, then we wouldn't have clothing. It's not like there's like people out there that don't have any clothing, and Hashem's talking about us, right? So Malbish Arumin is thanking Hashem for our clothing. Now, simple question, where does Hashem come into me having my clothing? My clothing, before I got it, it was in a box. Before I got it in a box, it was in a store. I ordered it online. And, before it was in that store, I assume it was like in a factory or something like that. And before it was in the factory, it was like, let's say we're talking about a wool sweater. So if we're talking about a wool sweater, so then it was the wool of a sheep, right? Oh, so now, so I know where, see, I get it. I get where Hashem was in my clothing. Hashem gave me my clothing? He gave me my clothing because at the beginning, Hashem created the world. And he set up the whole world, chasing made gracious. And one of the things he created is sheep. And that sheep led to more sheep, more sheep, more sheep, more sheep, more sheep, until the sheep that lives today. And that sheep had its wool sheared off, and that was made into my wool sweater. So now I found how Hashem got me my clothing, because he set up all the initial conditions all the way back at the beginning of the world. He set up all the dominoes, right? And he flicked the first domino, and they all went. And 3 bazillion dominoes later, I ended up with a wool sweater. So thank you, Hashem, for all the way at the beginning of creation, setting up the initial conditions such that I can have my sweater. We actually taught this to kids in Lubavitch Yeshiva Ocean Parkway as part of a Pirush HaMilos curriculum. And the Rabbi, Nikita Bey's Rabbi, asked them this question. And most of the kids, they just learned the previous year, Parashat Bereshis. They're at the beginning of 2nd grade. And so they said, because Hashem made the stuff at the beginning. So I'm not stop making this up. This is what most of the kids in the class said, and then one kid eventually got what I'm about to say now, which is what the Rebbe says. So the Rebbe says, it comes from Tanya originally, but the Rebbe says in the Sikha, we know the Mishnah says that Yizahu Chacham Aryeh Sanayla. So Chassidus teaches, Yizahu Chacham Aryeh Sanayla Me'ayin Liyesh. Who's a Chacham? Someone who sees how the whole world is being born from nothing into something at every moment. So when you put yourself in that state of consciousness, of recognizing the teaching of Chassidus, which is really mentioned by the Rambam right at the beginning of Mishnah Torah as well, at least according to some of Parsham, according to the Rebbe, Mamti Kol Nimtza, Hashem is creating the world at every moment. So if Hashem is creating the world every moment, so where's Hashem in me having my clothing? Well, I have clothing right now. So how do I have clothing right now? Because Hashem gave me clothing right now. Of course, it's also true that Hashem set up the initial conditions, right? That's also true. There's a different sikha where the Rebbe talks about the dual reality of each moment. That each moment is, on the one hand, a part of the hemshech of past, present, and future. And at the same time, each moment is a creation by itself, with nothing to do with the past, present, well, it has to do with the present, but nothing to do with the past or the future. Hashem created this moment the way it is right now. You could imagine, just for the sake of explaining this, that Hashem could have created this moment, and then no other moments, and that could have been all of existence. Just make this moment exist for a moment, and that's all. So every time we make a bracha, we're supposed to make 100 brachas throughout the day, every day. So imagine if every time we made a bracha, thanking Hashem for whatever food we're about to eat, or whatever we're saying in Shemona Esrei, every time we make a bracha, we think about, and the truth is that Shulchan Aruch also talks about thinking about the Pirush HaMilos of the names of Hashem. It doesn't exactly say this about thinking about Hashem's creating in every moment, but there's a level of consciousness that is asked of us when we make a bracha, even al pi halacha, right? And so imagine if 100 times a day, when we thank Hashem in the form of a bracha, I like to tell my kids, we don't say a bracha, we thank Hashem. And how do we thank Hashem? By saying a bracha. The act that you're doing is thanking Hashem. The act that you're doing is praising Hashem. The form that you use to do it is the bracha that the Chachamim established. So imagine if every time we said a bracha, we would think about Hashem creating the world at this moment, or if you want to use a more personalized language, He's creating me at this moment. He's creating everything I experience at this moment. He's creating the food I'm about to eat at this moment. I like to use those words. He's creating me and everything I experience at this moment. Those are my words that I like to use for myself. Again, Indiam Sam Shavis, you can find language that resonates in your brain. That's what I like to say for myself. And imagine 100 times a day we thought about that. So that, I think, is like for me, is the second building block. So there's Hashem is here. He's as real as another person. And in addition to being as real as another person, he's creating me and my whole experience right now. He's creating me and everything I experience right now. Put those two together and actually focus on that. And that's like, whoa.
All day long.
If you could do that all day long, you're in good shape. You know, the more you could do it, the better. You know, because that really, the way I see it is that's like the gateway to everything else. So, like, for example, what examples did we mention already? So, eating lunch, l'shem shamayim, right? So, I sit down to lunch. Hashem is here with me, just like the other people at the table at lunch. You know, there's me, my coworkers, and Hashem all sitting right there at the lunch table. Hashem's creating me and everything I experience right now. He is creating the food in front of me. And, you know, at that point, you might wonder, well, what's he doing that for? For what purpose is he creating me and my whole experience right now? For what purpose is he creating me and like I said, my whole experience? So he's creating me. He's creating the fact that I'm hungry, right? He creates the fact that I have a need to eat. What?
Creating the world,
Yeah.
air, creating time, space, everything.
Yeah. And not only that, he could have made it differently, right? He could have made it that I don't have to eat. We're even told that he will have created that we don't have to eat. So that brings out that there's like, it's not just like he happened to create it this way. There's like a specific intention to him creating it this way. It's like all of a sudden you start seeing like every little detail of the world it must be specifically intended to be specifically the way it is, because he's doing it right now. There's no dominoes flying around over here that maybe some of them were a mistake. He's making it that way right now. So why is he doing that? Why is he making that there's a Jewish person that's hungry and has to eat? What's the purpose of? Oh, then I remember everything that says about eating. It has to be ma'ila to kedusha. If we use it as fuel for a mitzvah, then it becomes kedusha. If we use it as fuel for our taiva, then it goes down to klipa. Oh, so I actually start to feel that I have this food in front of me, and Hashem is right here. It's funny, like why on my shoulder? I don't know, but Hashem is right here, wanting me, like he's right there, actively wanting me to eat this food consciously as fuel for a mitzvah. It's not just a concept. It's like I feel like there's this like person, you know, so to speak, or this being that's as real as a person here wanting me to do that. You know, just as real as like if you went to, you know, let's say you go to someone's house for a Shabbos meal and, you know, you got the feeling that someone really wants you to eat a certain dish because they made a special dish, you know, so you feel that person wanting you to eat it and enjoy it, right? So like you could have just as real of an experience of like Hashem being right there, wanting you to eat it, l'shem shamayim, as fuel for a mitzvah. That could be a very real experience. And it flows so much more naturally to have that experience when you have these two pieces in place of Hashem is real as another person, and he's creating me and my whole experience at this moment.
Hope you don't forget about eating the food while you have to fight.
Well, maybe that's why they say that that isn't it a word that misnagdim eat, make a bracha so they could eat, and chassidim eat so they can make a bracha. You actually start feeling like I'm eating to make a bracha. I'm eating as a part of my experience of Hashem, as a part of my relationship with Hashem. Okay, so that's really how I see it. We could go so many places with this. You know, you could go to bitachon with this. You know, Hashem is creating me in my experience at every moment. What do I think He's going to do in the future? oh, because I see that whatever money I have in my bank account, that's part of my experience at this moment. That's coming from Hashem. So how much money am I going to have in my bank account in the future? Depends on him. So, well, you could feel lots, or you could feel like suddenly scared, like, oh, maybe I'm not, right? This awakens, oh, of course, but this awakens for this level of consciousness. It doesn't always immediately generate positive emotions. It really depends on what else the person thinks and feels about Hashem. Okay, well, we don't have to go there, but that's really the clip of Amalek, by the way. When you know that Hashem is there and you're still having negative emotions, that's the whole word of the 7 nations. They melt, right? When the awareness of Hashem, sometimes some bad minutes go away when you start thinking about Hashem. Oh, Hashem did that, so then I'm not angry anymore. Oh, Hashem did that, so I'm not depressed anymore, right? And some bad minutes persist even while you're thinking about Hashem, and even while you're feeling like Hashem is real. And that's really the Kutub of Amalek, the way that I understand it. It also helps explain a lot of Chumash Bamidbar. You know, you read Chumash Bamidbar, it used to drive me nuts. Like, you read Chumash Bamidbar, they're having all the miracles and everything, and they're still messing it up. It's like, what are you guys doing? You know? But when you start having a real connection with Hashem, and you realize, like, oh, like, not everything is positive. Like, what if I'm sick? And like, Hashem's made, if I'm sick, and I really don't like being sick, let's say, I really don't. You ask my wife. Yeah, usually people don't. So they say that women handle being sick much better than men. You heard that? Every time men are sick, like, we think like that's it, you know. But that's what I heard that from a few people. I don't know. I have to do more of a survey. But you know, so if I'm having an experience that I really don't like, let's just say being sick, right? Chas v'shalom. And I'm super aware of Hashem being as real as another person, and Hashem's creating my whole experience right now, and Hashem's making me sick. Hey, I don't like that. Right? So it starts getting very like real and very raw. But again, that's there's, like I said, there's many places we could go with this, because the whole Yiddishkeit becomes, what about learning Torah? Learning Torah while you're in a state of awareness that Hashem is as real as another person, and He's creating your whole experience right now, and He gave you the Torah, which is His mind. That's what the Torah is. So then it comes to mind, like, wow, he's sitting right here. I'm picking his brain. He's sitting right here, and I'm picking his brain when I'm learning Torah. It's crazy.
That's why what was the sin in the first place of Big Tash? He didn't make a bracha before Torah.
Right.
They made a bracha.
Right. And the Alter Rebbe says also, well, the Alter Rebbe in general talks about it being Chacham Asir Tzenish HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is Hashem's mind, Hashem's Ratzon. And the later bracha of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe says that Hay Kol Tzamei L'Chulu Mayim means if you're thirsty for Hashem, learn Torah, but you don't realize, you don't realize He's in there. You know, you have to bring yourself to that awareness. So again, we could go everywhere with this. B'tachin, Torah, Mashiach, your B'tachainim. What's the purpose of everything? What's the purpose of each individual thing? But we want to go, we want to go to Elul and Tishrei, because officially we're talking about Elul and Tishrei. So now, imagine this is how you're feeling in Cheshvan, right? This is Cheshvan right here, what we're talking about. We didn't even say anything about any Yom Tov. So Elul and Tishrei is, within all this, there's something special about each time of the year. Because this is throughout the year. This is at every moment. Everything we've talked about until now is at every single moment. Yeah. Here, there, and everywhere, and now, then, and every when. I just made that up on the spot. Now, then, and every when. So what's with Elul and Tishrei? See, I love this, because just one more general thought about learning Chassidus that I think about a lot. You know, sometimes you learn a mimer and it's like right where your heart is, you know. And then other times you learn a mimer and it's like, whoa, this is like, what's going on over here, you know? And it's so abstract, and it's so, you know. So I find that if I'm ever like teaching a mimer, or even not teaching, even just deciding for myself what to learn, but especially if I'd be teaching, So it's a good question to ask. What would a person need to appreciate before appreciating the topic of this mimer? Because
Maybe mine was in my perspective. Same?
what?
Meaning you can't just come off the street and run a mime or mime trying to teach you a specific point. Let's say it's about topic. I know wondering about the baseball game. Talk. You have to first get yourself in mind today. Let's talk about talking. And when you head on the talking, to here. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, so bitachon is one of the more low-hanging fruit type of ones. That's why I think a lot of people get excited about the idea of bitachon, because it's very like directly related to what's going on in our lives. But if you learn, I'll just take like a very Haskalah type of example, like the early Maimarim of Ayin Beis. I didn't go through Ayin Beis, but one of the early Maimarim there, it starts talking about Oris and Kelim and like the process of Hishavas HaKelim. Okay, so Hishavas HaKelim, let's ask that question. What would I need to appreciate in order to be interested in a discussion about Hishavas HaKelim? Right? There's things that you need to have an appreciation of before that discussion feels relevant and interesting to you. And it's not just that you stop eating ice cream. It's like there's stuff that you have to. So, for example, like it's going on a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's a worthwhile tangent if that's okay. So the concept of spheres, right? So what are Oris and Kelim? Oris and Kelim are two components of the spheres. Now, if I have no idea what a sphera is, then I'm very unlikely to be interested in the two components that make up the sphera and how they could be this way and they could be that way. But if they come together in the perfect way, then you get a sphera, which I don't even know what a sphera is. Right? But if I have a concept of what a sphera is, even a simple concept, for example, if I know that the sphera, that anytime I say the sphera of Atzilus, it means Hashem's midah of that. So in other words, x of Atzilus equals Hashem's midah of x. We could use algebraic thinking over here. So chesed of Atzilus equals Hashem's midah of chesed. Gvura of Atzilus equals Hashem's midah of gvura. Don't think so? Should I say kivyachol, just in case? But conceptually, that's what it is, right? To the point that. So Atzilus is interesting. Oh, like it's like an interesting question. Like there's Hashem, right? Hashem's as real as another person. He's sitting right here. Does he have midas like us? So in a way, no, they're very different than ours. But in a way, yes, because like you said, right? There's some kind of structure that he put himself into for the sake of the creation of the world. We call it Adam Ha'elyon. There's a whole quote from there from the Shalah, which is escaping me right now, but it brings it out in a very interesting way that like Hashem is like Hashem as he's mislavish in the spheres. It's almost like a person that created the world, like it says in the Yecheskel about the Musa Kisev, the Musa Maria Adam Alav, right? Like something that looks like a person, or maybe Sayach Zalaka, or Tzelem Elokim, right? So there's like this structure that Hashem uses to create the world. It's not only like a structure that he uses to create the world. It's a structure that he puts himself into. Like it's a structure for himself. In other words, it specifically says that it's not that the spheres are not like tools in a toolbox. It's not like something separate from him that he picks up, so to speak, and uses to create the world. It's actually him, right? So it's like, oh, that's interesting. Like Hashem has like an actual midah. There's like an actual thing in existence of Hashem's midah of chesed. There's an actual thing in existence of Hashem's mayach hachachma tivyachol, right? Or mayach rabina. I don't know if mayach is the appropriate word when we use it in that way, but kayach, let's say Hashem's kayach hachachma, Hashem's kayach rabina. So that's interesting. How did that get there? Oh, as soon as I say, how did that get there? And as soon as I become interested in how did that get there, so now, Iris and Kalim come as an answer to an interesting question, right? So everything in Chassidus is like that. There's certain things that are very simple, and they're very connected to our life already, and they're easy for us to appreciate the relevance of it. And then there's like going more into the details and more into the subtleties, and those questions are usually only relevant when you have the more general understanding first. I'm sure, even though I don't have like a bunch of my marm on this topic off the top of my head, but I'm sure that if you went into the sugya of why we don't blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah, I'm sure that this applies over there, that there's like the Alter Rebbe's mimer that lays out the general understanding of it, and then I'm sure that there's later my marm that pick on a detail of it, or about it. Yeah, this is about Chedesh Elul also. The Alter Rebbe says the Melech B'Sada, you give me the Rachamim, and then you have my marm that go into this whole thing. Is it a Nesinas Kayach? Is it a Hisayrus Milamayla? Like, what exactly is the nature of this Hisayrus Yugim Rachamim? Right? So that it's like personally, when I would years ago when I tried learning what was my marm about, is it in the Nesinas Kayach, or is it this, or is it that? It was like, I don't care. Not that I shouldn't care, but I just was not in a place where like the question of which exact way is it felt relevant to me. Where I was at in my avodah is trying to appreciate this is a time of rachman, a time of, I don't like the words a time of rachman, because it's not a time of rachman. It's Hashem showing up to this time in a way of rachman. Maybe I'll talk more about that distinction soon. Maybe hear it already in the way that I'm saying it. But like that was in my avodah and my relationship with Hashem, that was enough for me. Like focusing on Hashem is at this time acting towards us in the way of rachamim. I don't need for my avodah right now the whole question of which exact way it works, and therefore learning that when I wasn't like ready to learn that would actually distract me from the relationship component. Again, I'm not saying I'm Islamita, I'm just saying my experience. But anyway, so my point is that going back to the question I said a few minutes ago is it's good to ask whenever we're learning Chassidus or teaching Chassidus, what would a person need to appreciate in order to care about this and feel like this is highly relevant and deeply relevant? So, what?
For themselves when they're learning.
Yeah.
They could ask, they're not finding interesting what people are saying. What would I need to do to feel this relevant?
Yeah, 100%. That's a great point. Meaning, instead of feeling like, oh, it's Chassidus again, doing its lofty stuff, oh no, maybe look inside. What do I need before this? So this is, I'm bringing this up now because we wanted to talk about Elul and Tishrei, and so far I haven't said a word about Elul and Tishrei pretty much. And the reason why I didn't jump into straight into Elul and Tishrei is because for me, the whole idea of Elul and Tishrei is like that for me. Meaning, it's like if I don't have that baseline relationship with Hashem that applies every day, so then I don't really feel that much about Elul and Tishrei. So for me, it's like, what do I need to appreciate before I could appreciate Hamelech B'Sada and Yigil Midas Rachmim and things like that? So I need to appreciate that Hashem is as real as another person, and that He's creating my experience at every moment. And when I'm in a space of feeling like Hashem is as real as another person, He's creating my whole experience at every moment, then, oh, this month is a time of Rachamim. Interesting. What does that mean for me? So let's talk about that. We're all Lubavitchers here. Does anyone ever have a hard time with guilt? Maybe I ever feel like, maybe their Avodas Hashem is not like where they want it to be? I want to tell you, in the coaching that I've done over the last couple of years, I think that the most common topic that everybody brought up, regardless of personality or whether they're a bacher or a shliach or a business owner or whatever, the number one thing that I think is like ubiquitous from doing life coaching with Lubavitchers is, what about my chesroinus? the guilt of my chesronis. And I know from my own experience also. Maybe I just attract those kind of people because I'm also like that. But I don't think so. I think that it's something that we all experience because we're learning Chassidus, we're exposed to a very high level of Avodas Hashem. Like we're reading about very high standards of Avodah, like standards that, like, I don't know if anyone ever even heard of some of this stuff, like the type of bittul that we learn about, the type of ava that we learn about, like for many Yidden, the focus is like following halacha, and you can do it because you're getting schar in Gan Eden and you're a tzaddik, like, it's good. I'm not putting it down. It's a different.
My friend was running Tanya with all the course of it. I was like, look at you guys. Because one time he said, I love it. And the issue is never going to become a tzaddik. And I don't know, he said, why is Tanya I'm tzaddik? I'm never going to become a tzaddik.
Right.
The same.
Hillel Parasher, there's a story of Hillel Parasher that Hillel Parasher said before he became before he became a chassid, he was like sitting trying to figure out like how is Hashem going to have enough schar for him. Wasn't Hillel Parasher? No? Okay, maybe I heard wrong. But a chassid. But are you sure it really wasn't? You're sure it wasn't Hillel Parasher? Because it must have been someone who was like learning, like you said, Riza. No.
Well, I remember he was. I don't know his name, but he lived in Eretz Yisrael. Right. Isn't a young?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know who it was, but it was someone who was doing big things before he became a chassid, right? And so he was trying to figure out how Hashem was going to possibly have enough schar for him. What? How Hashem's going to have enough schar for him. And then he became a chassid, and he started wondering, like, how could Hashem even like tolerate his existence? Because so what does that mean? Chassidus isn't Chassidus like the happy there? Like, why did he feel that way? My understanding of the story, again, I don't know.
At the end of the story, I heard.
Yeah.
Another version said, the story goes, he was in a store going all day, and he came to the altar. He was going all day. They said, "What changed? I didn't say money." He said this part. He said, "For that is what the journey."
Interesting.
Right. I'm happy just to something to see what's real, what's true.
Right.
So he's a tzaddik that he's not learning. Oh, he's learning doing halacha, but he's totally disconnected. He's a tzaddik. It's nice for him to have any guilt, but he's lacking in the truth. We don't have any guilt.
So but why does the guilt arise though? Why does the guilt arise? It's not because Chassidus is telling you you're bad, you're bad, you're bad. It's just that Chassidus talks about this very lofty, I don't want to use the word lofty, but it talks about a very high standard, reaching very great spiritual heights. And when you read about those spiritual heights and you see that you're not at those spiritual heights, so then it could be like a lot of guilt, right? Could be. You're at the spiritual heights. What are you saying? You can't say anything. So.
It was nothing. It was just right there. It was just right there. It was made it better. It was made you what you are, and therefore, if you're not holding a very spiritual height, it doesn't mean to stay where you are. It doesn't mean you have to get.
You could have that experience, or you could have the experience like I did. Like I'm sharing a little bit. I was saying that not always does this only bring positive emotions. For me, at a certain stage of my growth, I guess, it actually made the guilt even more. Because, what? You can see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
he's here. He's wanting me to do whatever he is wanting me to do. I see that I just didn't do it. I can't seem to get my body to do, no matter how clear it is in my mind that he wants me to do whatever it is. And I see that I just like, I don't know, my body just is not going, or it's Shabbos and he really doesn't want me to like pick my skin, let's say on Shabbos, right? But he gave me a lot of peeling skin. He gave me the peeling skin, right? Hands are all chopped up in the winter or whatever it is, right? He made it all peely like that, and he's telling me sit there all Shabbos and don't peel it, like, and it's not kares or something, like what, so it doesn't always go so positive. But that's real avodas Hashem to navigate that challenge. You know, of course it is. But it's what I'm saying is that the Yetzer Hara doesn't vanish out of existence the moment you start realizing Hashem is as real as another person who's creating your whole experience at every moment. The Yetzer Hara still continues to persist. Yeah. So
don't get stuck in guilt.
no, so you have to work on it. But I'm just saying that the guilt arises. Why am I talking about guilt? Because we're talking about rachamim. The opposite of rachamim is din, right? And din, so I could have judgments on myself. Like guilt, when a person feels guilty, it's basically that they're judging themselves. Now imagine a person has a lot of din on themselves and has a lot of guilt. Yeah.
He thinks he's even a judge, right?
I see you don't seem to be familiar with the Nefesh Bahamas, Rabbi Pass.
I'm very familiar with that. I understand. We're gonna find out.
Okay.
Highly guilty.
So imagine a person is aware of his shortcomings in avodas Hashem, and he's coming up to Rosh Hashanah, and he's pumped up with Chassidus about how Rosh Hashanah is the head of the whole year, and everything that's going to happen to him the whole year is about to be decided, right? It all depends on how you show up on that day, pretty much, and the days before, the days after. It'd be scary stuff. That could be really scary stuff. What if I have big goals for next year? And I have big goals, and I realize that Hashem is real. He's as real as another person. He's creating my whole experience at every moment. He's gonna create my whole next year. You'd be scared. You don't think so?
Exalted, excited, wow.
So it all depends on your level of trust in Hashem, right? See, when you're not aware of Hashem as being real and creating your whole experience at every moment, so you could not have bitachon and not have the opposite of bitachon. You just go, right? When you're aware of the reality of Hashem and how Hashem's creating everything every moment, or like they had in the midbar, right? There's no being parv about Hashem. It was either you had the bitachon or you didn't, you know? Either you think he's going to make it good or you think he's not going to make it good. And so in that context, and this is not the only relevance of Elul, obviously, but it's one way that Elul can be relevant. So then Rachamim is wow, there's a time of no din for a whole month. That's pretty cool. There's a time when no matter what I did over the past year, if I make a commitment to doing better, he's gonna smile at me, and I can count on it. It's not in the scales. It's anybody who comes is smiling. Wow, that's pretty cool. What? You really have to, yeah. But you can, and he wants, and so then it becomes Hashem is here. He's as real as another person. He's creating my whole experience at every moment, and he is showing up to this moment in a way of ready to forgive me and ready to give me my requests, and all he wants is just I should make a commitment to doing better. That's Elul to me. He's here just like you're here. He's creating my whole experience. And anything that went wrong this past year, just commit to doing better, and we can wipe the whole thing away. And it's Yom Kippur. It's to the same degree, seemingly from the Maimar of the Alter Rebbe, seemingly to the same degree as Yom Kippur, without the fasting. Just what is Elul originally in Chumash? Always good to bring things back to Chumash, you know? I'm a big Chumash guy. Elul through Yom Kippur is the forgiveness for the Chet Egel. You can forgive the Chet Egel. Forgive actual Avodah Zarah, or whatever, the portion, yeah. But he can forgive the Chet Egel. That's pretty powerful forgiveness right there. I like that. Yeah, pretty good, pretty good. So how much more so he could forgive my not Chet Egel? He doesn't want me to do another not Chet Egel. He wants me to do tshuva, but the openness to forgive, right? And the openness to give me a good year, despite whatever may have happened this past year. Amazing. Now, if I'm in a place where I don't think of my experience as being created from Hashem, so that idea is much weaker, right? But if I'm like deeply in tune with the fact that my whole experience is being created by Hashem at every moment, so then whether Hashem is judging me or Hashem is having rachamim on me, it's like a big nafkamina. It's like a big deal. If my whole experience is being determined by that, my whole reality, my whole life, everything that's going to happen to me in the next year is all based on that. So, wow, so this is a real opportunity to reconnect and to clean up whatever might have gone wrong in the last year. And the truth is, it helps us if someone is struggling with guilt. Again, it could be many other things a person's struggling with. For me, this one of guilt is a big one. So the whole year, it helps with the guilt even, because there's sichas where the Rabbi and the Frierdiker Rabbi talk about, like, don't do too much cheshbon nefesh during the year. Save it for Elul, like the idea of the businessman he can't always be making a cheshbon. He makes a cheshbon at the end of the year. So it's saying, save the main cheshbon nefesh for the time when Hashem is in super forgiving mode at the end of the year. And in the meantime, go and do the best you can. And don't obsess over your shortcomings. Don't get so caught up in it. Of course, you also do a cheshbon nefesh certain times during the year. But the main cheshbon nefesh is in this time of supercharged rachamim when everything can be repaired. It's like an unbelievable thing. And it's like a scheduled thing every year, you know? Imagine you have a scheduled time once a month or once a year. You know, we sort of have Yom Kippur every month, or Rosh Chodesh, Yom Kippur Katan. You know, imagine you had a scheduled time every whatever tekufa you want, week, month, year, where with each person that you have a really deep relationship with, you say, we're putting this date on the calendar, that we don't let this date go by without talking through and clearing up anything that might be in the way of our relationship. That would be cool. That's what Yom Kippur is. And the Alter Rebbe says that Elul is basically Yom Kippur without all the fanfare. You know, it's in the field. So that's what Elul is too. It's a scheduled month of we can clean up everything that happened, we can get past everything and reconnect in a deep way. And then Rosh Hashanah, we're running out of time, so we'll just talk briefly about Rosh Hashanah. So I like to think of every Yom Tov in terms of like, basically the way we just said about Elul. It's like, how is Hashem showing up to this time? Instead of it being, this is a time of Rachamim, it's Hashem is showing up to this time, Kivyachol, in a way of Rachamim. You know, a quick tangent again. In English, there's something called active voice and passive voice in English grammar. So if you say an active voice sentence is like, Aryeh hit the ball, right? A passive voice, if you want to flip that sentence into passive voice, you say, the ball was hit. If you want, you could say by Aryeh, but you don't have to. It could be a finished sentence. You just say the ball was hit. You know. So when you switch from active voice to passive voice, the person who's doing the thing a lot of times gets cut out of the sentence. So in Yiddishkeit, we sometimes say things in the passive voice, so to speak. We don't say who is the one doing it. So it's a time of rachamim. It's a time of doing tshuva. Well, who made it the time of rachamim? Who made it a time of doing tshuva? It's not that it's a time of. It's also true. It's a time of rachamim, but he made it a time of rachamim. So it's and not just he made it. He's making it now. So he's right now making a time of rachamim. He's coming, and this is what chassidus means when it says that there's a gili of this midah or that midah, right? It's how's Hashem expressing Himself at this time. So in Elul, he is as real as another person. He's creating my whole experience right now, and he is showing up and creating in a way of rachamim, which means he's super ready to forgive anything that might have gone wrong. He's super ready to listen to my requests. And so what's the natural way for me to act in response to him presenting that is to try to do tshuva and to present my requests, right? And so the same thing with any time of year. On Rosh Hashanah, it says specifically in the Maimer, Rosh Hashanah, the king is in the palace. He's not in the field anymore. So the king is showing up differently on the day of Rosh Hashanah. So on Rosh Hashanah, he's still as real as another person. He's still creating my experience at every moment. But now, it's not Rachamim. Now, it's, let me know if you want me to be the king. I'm interested in being king. You let me know if you're in. Right? And you let me know. We'll start Rosh Hashanah. The Tainug is not there. He's not fully invested in creating the world. The Rebbe's father spoke about actually feeling it. I think there's a story that someone asked the Rebbe's father, like, Rosh Hashanah, shouldn't it feel a little different? And I think the Rebbe's father said something like, what, you don't feel it? I don't think that's the exact words, but the concept, right? So tzaddikim feel it, and they feel it. Hashem's Tainug, passion, interest in creating the world is lacking a little bit. Yeah, like, do you guys want this? If you want it, show me you want it. Accept go Malchus Shemayim and blow shofar and daven the whole day and Malchus Zichronis for shofars. That's how you'll tell me if you want me to still be the king. That's like a totally different way of Hashem showing up to a day, right? And that's why for us that's a totally different kind of day. And Yom Kippur is still a different way. And Aseret Tshuva are a certain way, but then Sukkot is a totally different way, right? Sukkot that already switches totally to Kavi Yamin, and Sukkot he's showing up in a way of closeness. Come sit in the sukkah. Everything you do, you hang out with your friends, you eat a sandwich, do it all in the sukkah, and it's all a mitzvah. Eating a piece of cake, we're going to make it a mitzvah. Just do it in the sukkah. It's a hug, and now it's a mitzvah to eat cake. You have to stay leishiv with sukkah. You need a cake because you're doing a mitzvah. And then Simchas Torah, you don't even need mitzvahs. There's no mitzvah of Simchas Torah. I'm saying there's a Yom Tov, but no specific mitzvah of Simchas Torah. Hashem showing up in a way of the Maila of a Yid. And the Yid is the feet for the Torah. The Yid is taking the Torah to the place that it can't go. And so you think of the whole year, each time of year in this way. How's trying to understand, again, Hashem is as real as another person. He's creating my whole experience right now. And at each time of year, there's a certain way in which he is showing up to that time and what he's projecting into the world. How am I going to relate to that, given that that's what he's creating at that time? So if we can train ourselves to have the regular weekday awareness of Hashem being real and Hashem bringing our whole experience into existence, then all of the stuff that Chassidus says about the particular times, it flows so much more. Because you're actually sensitive to the fact that there's something happening now. And then once you're sensitive to the fact that there's something happening now, you can become sensitive to which thing is happening now. Then all these stories start to make sense. Like, it says like on Erev Shabbos how, I think this one was actually Hillel Parcher. Hillel Parcher would it says Shabbos is a Dormita Deza, right? Whatever that means, I don't exactly know, but it's time of going to sleep. So, what? Before Shabbos, Erev Shabbos. So Hillel Parcher, because of that Inyan, so I suspect, if I could suppose that Hillel Parcher would agree with my way of expressing things. So on Erev Shabbos, Hashem is real. He's creating my whole experience, and he's showing up in a way that has something to do with sleep, whether I fully understand it or not. I'm sure he did, right? And so Hillel Parcher would go to sleep, and when he would lay down to go to sleep, he would fall asleep right away. And by the Alter Rebbe, it says a different lashon, which I don't remember the exact lashon. I don't want to say wrong because it's Alter Rebbe, but the Alter Rebbe, it was like even more natural than that. It was like the Alter Rebbe didn't even have to lay down to go to sleep or something along those lines, right? And that's the concept of, it's called histachkos haguf, like the body of a tzaddik is so refined that it flows like more and more effortlessly, that their body aligns with whatever is happening in the in the partzufim and how Hashem is showing up to the world. So for us, it doesn't happen automatically. We have a body that is for these last few moments of God, still a body of flipot. So for us, it takes thought and it takes effort and it takes work and it takes clarity to even just get like a little bit of awareness, But I really believe that it's shaykh to each and every one of us. And I hope that the way that I broke it down tonight will help make it accessible to more and more people. And I hope that people will experiment with their own thoughts and their own hisvarinus and their own experience in the same Shabbos. Everyone's going to have their own, specific way and specific experience of it. And I hope that this will be helpful. And if anyone wants to be in touch, you're welcome to reach out to me and we can talk.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me.
Off.